Well, hello and welcome back to Ferguson Library's online streaming technology classes. I want to apologize first for what happened on Tuesday. This class was meant to be taught on Tuesday, so if you're here for Microsoft Office Integrated, that is going to be taught next Tuesday, April 21st. Today we're going to be looking at Advanced Word. I had some electrical issues at my house this past couple of days. They're finally sorted out, but it basically meant that I didn't have power for most of Tuesday. So with that said, thank you and welcome for returning here to Microsoft Word Advanced with the Ferguson Library. Before I start going over kind of some of the stuff that the class is going to cover, I just kind of want to go over some of the things kind of working here on the YouTube platform. So first off, if you notice right above my head here, I have a link to fergusonlibrary.org/online-tech-classes. The handouts for the classes are going to be available there, and so that will take you to this website here. And so this here has the information about our upcoming and past class schedule. If you've missed any of our past classes, I have links to all of the recordings right here on the Ferguson Library YouTube channel. And then are the links for the upcoming classes. Right now on the schedule, we have 3 classes counting today's. We have Advanced Microsoft Word today, and then next week I'll be doing Microsoft Office Integrated and Introduction to Web Building, HTML and CSS. As you scroll down, there will be a bunch of different tabs for all the different classes. You'll want to click on this one here that says Advanced Microsoft Word, and there are going to be 3 different handouts that you'll want to download. One of them is going to be the PDF handout document that is this one here. That's going to show the different exercises that we're working, as well as kind of some information about lynda.com there at the end. And then you're also going to want to download the practice exercise documents that we're using. So there's going to be an Alice in Wonderland practice document. This is the text of the public domain text of Alice in Wonderland. We're going to be using that as we start working with long documents. And you're going to want to download this practice document here because this is what we'll be working on when we work with things like track changes. Finally, there's also a link underneath here that says click here to access the Google Doc practice document. We'll come to that again later when we work on a little bit something later on in the class. And then finally down at the bottom is a kind of post-class survey link. I will have the address on the screen at the end of the class, but you can also come here and click the survey link to kind of finish the assessment survey on that. So those are just kind of things you want to be able to kind of go and kind of download those handouts and have them open. If you have any questions during the course of this class, ask them in the chat. What you're seeing is a couple minutes, not a couple minutes, it's a few seconds behind how I'm presenting, but I will see your questions. And when I figure there's a good point to stop, I will go and go back and answer your questions on there. Through this class, because most of you are probably watching this on a single screen, you're probably watching me, and then you're going to have Microsoft Word open up in the background, is I'm going to go through and I'm going to demonstrate the different activities, the different skills that we're going to be working on, and then I will give you usually between 3 to 5 minutes to go off into Word and kind of work on them yourself. Those are a really good time to ask questions. I can answer questions and I can kind of walk through the steps again if you wanted me to kind of re-go over something. And if that's not enough time to kind of finish what you're doing, let me know and I could extend that time a little bit longer. So if there's any questions right now, please ask them in the chat, but we're going to kind of get on and start covering with what we're going to be looking at here in Microsoft Word Advanced or Advanced Microsoft Word. So first things coming into this class, what you should know already. So these are things that are already covered in our earlier Microsoft Office or Microsoft Word classes. So things like creating a new Word file, saving and opening a saved Word file, changing the font size and format of the text in a Word document, inserting and editing images into a Word document, inserting and editing tables into a Word document, creating a header and footer in a Word document, and how to use Microsoft Word styles. So those were all things that were covered in our basic and intermediate Microsoft Word classes. So I'm not going to really go over them, maybe with a slight refresher on like styles and the header and footer information, but not really going to go into depth into those skills there. If you are interested in kind of, if you haven't practiced those or you want to work on those there, we do have the recording of my intermediate and basic Word classes available on the YouTube channel. The links are available on the website right up there. What I am going to be covering in this class is that we're going to be looking at how to work with lists in Microsoft Word. So things like bulleted and numbered lists. We're going to look at how to use breaks and styles to organize long documents and create a table of contents. So we're going to be looking at kind of when you're working with like a 1 or 2 page document, things in Word are a lot easier. But when you start dealing with something that's significantly longer, that you have a lot of text to deal with, there are some things that you can do to kind of help make things easier and more organized, and things that you want to start working on like at the beginning when you create the document instead of going back and working on it later. So we'll look at some of that stuff there. We're going to look at how to format the text into columns. So we're going to look at how the columns in Microsoft Word works. And those kind of link up with the whole section breaks and page breaks. So we'll look at that there. And then finally, we're going to look at different ways to work collaboratively in Microsoft Word. So we're going to look at things like comments and track changes. So we're going to look at the comments and track changes section in Microsoft Word. We're going to look at the different formats that you can save Microsoft Word. So when you have to share a Microsoft Word document with somebody, what are the different options of how you can save that file to share it with them? And then finally, we're going to look at working in the cloud with Google Docs. It's not exactly Microsoft Word, but Google Docs is pretty close, and it's kind of a neat way to kind of work collaboratively with a bunch of people on a single document. So, and there are ways. Microsoft Office does have they do have their OneDrive and their online Office 365 system that does allow some of those same collaboration tools. But Google Docs is kind of more easily accessible for everybody to work with. So we'll work on that there and such. And usually, what you can do there, you can carry on to other programs. So if there's any questions about what we're going or covering, let me know, but we will dive into here. So the first thing that we'll actually want to do is we will want to start with a blank Word document. We're going to just start with kind of a blank document here. And the first thing we're going to be looking at is we're going to be looking at outlining or lists in Microsoft Word. So I'm going to come up here and I'm going to double click on blank document. So I just have my blank Word document. Did I open up too many? I did. There we go. Okay, so now I have one blank Word document open here. So in Microsoft Word, there are 2 main types of lists that they have. They have a bulleted list, which uses these little round dots or squares or whatever shape that you decide that you can set up for the bullets on there and such, to have kind of like an unnumbered list to kind of help organize information on your page. The other type of thing is also what they call is a numbered list, where you get the 1, 2, 3, 4, and this will usually make an outline. So you'll have 1, and then it'll go down to A, and then it will go down to like a Roman numeral 1. You can actually go in and adjust the way these numbering and the letterings kind of work in the numbering libraries. Usually if you look at up here on the ribbon, I'm in the Home tab on Microsoft Word, and up on the ribbon under either the bulleted list here, so this is under the paragraph section, there's a bulleted list here, and then there's the numbered list here. And you can see, just like a lot of other buttons on the ribbon, it's a 2-part button. The first button is the default entry. It will just create a numbered list or a bulleted list if I click that one there. But then right to the right of it is this little menu kind of button that will open up and give you some more options. So like if I wanted to do a bulleted, you can see I have some kind of different options for if I wanted to make it look like a checklist, and I have little checks going on there. Or if I do something like the dots here, I can then actually have like a little check thing. If I print this out, I can have a place where I can put a check mark on there. Or the standard just black dot for a bulleted list. So those are just a variety, and so you can go in, and there are ways to kind of add in, you can define new bullets, you can add in different symbols onto there. It's nothing that we're really going to go into in this class, but it's just something that's kind of available that you can do. You can kind of have the different styles that you want to use as you're designing. So in order to start a list, whether it's a bulleted list or a numbered list, and we're going to start actually in our exercise here. So let me just show you the first exercise that we're working on here. So we're going to be working on right here, exercise 1 on the Microsoft Word Advanced handout. And the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to start a numbered list in a new document. So let me go back here, and I'm going to click the numbered list button. So right up here on the top, I'm going to move my mouse around so it makes it kind of eye-catching. I'm going to click the numbered list, and you'll see it will start off with number 1 here. You can also start a numbered list by just typing 1 period and then space, and the auto formatting in Microsoft Word will automatically start making it a numbered list. So something that's a little convenient. So it can be a little annoying if you don't want to have a numbered list, and if you don't want a numbered list, you can see we get this little button here with a lightning bolt on it, and this is the autocorrect options. If I click this here and tell it to undo automatic numbering, it'll just go back and make it like normal text. So that's just something to keep in mind. But the easiest way to start the numbered list is just come up here and click numbering, and I start with number 1. And we're going to start making a grocery list in this case. So we're going to put in our list items. We're going to have milk, eggs, bread. And you can see I wrote these exercises pre-coronavirus pandemic when the idea of a shopping list wasn't exactly the most stressful of ideas. But this is what we're going with. I probably should have thought about changing this before this class started. Canned soup and apples. And then, so you can see, when I got to the end of each individual line, I hit enter, and when I hit enter, it brought me down to a new line and automatically added the, let me go down here again. So I'm at the end of apples, I hit enter again, it goes down to the new line and automatically adds the 6 for the next number on the line. As I go through, it'll just keep numbering them as it goes through. If I wanted to add something into the middle of the list, so like I'm looking at my list here and it's like, okay, so I have these 5 items here, and then I realized, wait a second, suppose in my mind I have these organized the way that my grocery store is organized, which actually is pretty close. If I work from one side of the store to the other. And I said, okay, you know what, I need to put something in the middle here because that's where it exists in my store. So like in between milk, actually in between eggs and bread, we have our freezer aisle, so I'm going to put in, and so what I did was I went to the end of my second line, I went to the line above where I wanted to add something in, and I hit enter, and you can see what it did is it went in and it created a new line and then automatically numbered the things down here. And so that's the advantage of using Microsoft Word's numbered list system there, is that normally if you did this manually, like if I did this manually, I would do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then realize, oh no, I needed to put something in the middle. I would have to go in, I would have to put it into the middle, and then I'd have to renumber everything going down the list again. Microsoft Word automatically does that renumbering. So here we're just going to put frozen peas. So with that, I am going to give you about, we'll say about 3 minutes. Go into your Microsoft Word document, open it up, and create a numbered list. So you'll do that by opening up a blank Microsoft Word document under the paragraph section up here on the ribbon. The top button, you'll want to hit this one here that you can see almost, it's a little difficult to see possibly, but you can see 1, 2, 3, it's the numbered list. If you put your mouse over it, you'll get this tooltip that will say numbering. Click on that, it should put a number 1 onto your screen, and then just type in your list. When you get to the end of an entry, hit enter, it'll go down to a new line, and you can add the next number onto your list. If you have any questions, or if this doesn't make any sense, please let me know in the chat, and I'll give you about 3 minutes to work on this. Thank you. Okay, just about a minute more. Let me know again if you have any questions. Okay, so has everybody created their numbered shopping list here with showing the items that I have here on the screen? So one of the things when it comes to working with lists in Microsoft Word is that you're also able to make what they call multi-level lists. And multi-level lists allow you to kind of organize information, say under categories, just like an outline. If you remember outlining from school, where you had usually like Roman numeral 1, and then you went A, and then 1, and then lowercase b, and you were able to kind of make different levels that kind of show different importance on your organization there. You can do that in Microsoft Word as well too. So I'm going to go here under Canned Soup. So I'm going to click in to the right edge of Canned Soup, and then I'm going to hit Enter to go down to a new line. You can see it automatically creates a new line and numbers it as 6. What I'm going to do actually is I'm going to indent this into a new level. And so I'm going to do that by hitting the Tab key on my keyboard. So the Tab key brings my list, you can see it brings my entry into and makes it, instead of it being number 6, it makes it a lowercase a, and then it renumbers this last one here to kind of keep the numbering of this level here correct. And you can have a huge number of levels. I mean, it depends on how organized or how detailed you're making your list. So under canned soup here, I can put in some different types of canned soup. So I can put in chicken soup or chicken noodle. I can spell chicken, I promise. Tomato. And we're going to do cream of mushroom soup. And so what I did, just like when I was typing the list before, was I was able to type something. When I got to the end of the line, I hit Enter. It went in and created a new line on that same level that I was creating. So it was able to keep the same level that I was working at. Now, if I decided that, okay, so tomato here, I decided this needed to be, because it's actually maybe I wanted to get actually tomatoes instead of tomato soup, I can move this entry back to the top level or the leftmost level of my list by using Shift Tab. So Tab indents to the right, Shift Tab moves it back to the left. So if I hold down my Shift key and hit Tab, actually that did not work because I need to be at the front of the line. I need to be right here at the start of the line. Shift Tab, and you can see that jump that back to the left to line it with the left edge or the top side of my list. And then it also adjusted the numbering. So there's that automatic numbering again. It made this number 6, so it's in line with that there, and then automatically renumbered apples there. If I decided I did want to put this back under the list, I can hit Tab and I can move it back in again. If I hit Tab again, you can kind of see I can move into a new level, and you can see how it automatically renumbers or reletters these situations there. I'm going to hit Shift Tab again. If you're not comfortable using your keyboard to tab or shift tab, kind of change the indent, up here in the paragraph tab, in this section up here, right next to the list section, is the indent and increase and decrease indent buttons. So these will do the same thing. So if I click that there, you can see it moves it back to the left. If I click this one here, that is the arrow pointing to the right, it moves it into the right. So I'm going to give you about 2 minutes. Go back into your Microsoft Word document. And what you're going to do is you're going to go to the end of canned soup. You're going to create a new line by hitting Enter. And then you're going to hit the Tab key or this increase indent to go in and create a new level of your list, kind of organization, and then type in the 3 different types of soups that are on your exercise. If you have questions, please let me know in the chat. Okay, so has everybody added a sublist to their canned soup section on their shopping list? We're going to do the same thing. I realize I should have probably had you do this before we went off to practice again, but we're going to do the same thing here with our apples. We're going to change, instead of apples, we're going to change this to ingredients for apple pie. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go down to a new line, and instead of making 7, I'm going to make a sublist here. And in the sublist here, we're going to have apples, because you need apples to make apple pie. We're going to do flour, because you need flour for your crust. You need butter for your crust. Cinnamon. I can spell. It's always fun watching somebody type live. And sugar. There we go. So those are our basic ingredients for an apple pie. And so once again, just like I did with the sublist, I was actually easily able to change an item in the list there. And then I was able to come down and create a sublist underneath, just like I was able to do before. So you can, I'll give you some time to kind of go off and do that there. Not right now, because the last thing I'm going to, or the second to last thing I'm going to show you here with the list. We have a couple more things to look at here. Is you've created this numbered list here. What happens if you wanted it to be a bulleted list? Suppose you accidentally click the wrong button up there. Changing it is really easy. What you're going to do is you're going to highlight your list. So you're going to highlight the whole list by just clicking and dragging over everything to make sure that it's selected. I'm going to come up here to the numbered list section on the ribbon, and I'm going to come over here and just I'm going to click bulleted list. And so I went from numbered list being selected, clicking it to bulleted list, and you can kind of see it's gone through and changed all of my numbers to these little bullets. The final thing I just want to show is how do you get out of the list, because you notice every time I hit enter it goes down to a new line and creates that there. And so in order to get out of a list, you just have to hit enter a couple of times. So I hit it once to go down to this new line, so now it's showing a new line with a bullet ready to go. When I hit it again, you can see it took me back to the start of my list. So it basically says, oh, okay, you actually want to create a new top level item. If I hit it one more time, it leaves the list and brings me back into kind of my normal text here that I'm able to start typing. And so we're going to go in and I'm going to add in just kind of a note for my shopping list here. Check to see if chicken is on sale this week. So I'm going to give you about another 3 minutes. Go into your list. And just kind of follow the exercise. The exercises are, again, here on your exercise list. We're going to create a sublist under apples. We're going to change apples to ingredients for apple pie. We're going to add a sublist for the ingredients of the apple pie. We're going to make everything that's a numbered list into a bulleted list. And again, to do that, what you're going to do is you're going to select your list. You're just going to highlight and select it. And you're just going to click from numbered list. You're just going to click on bulleted list there, and that'll automatically change. You can see I can easily change back and forth between the different types of lists by just clicking on the one that I want. And then finally, you're going to exit your list by hitting enter until you get the cursor that doesn't have a number or the bullet in front of it. And then you'll actually see up here your style will be back to normal. The highlight up here will be on normal. If I click here, you can see how this is now highlighted up here on normal under my style. And then just kind of type in a line or type in whatever you want for that there. So I'm going to give you about 3 minutes to do that. If you have questions, please ask me in the chat. Thank you. And while you're working on this here, just kind of think about the different reasons why you'd want to use a numbered list versus a bulleted list. Just kind of the different things about why you'd want to use one over the other or the different needs for it. I find them interchangeable sometimes, but sometimes it's more useful to have something that's numbered and something that's bulleted where I don't need to have something specifically numbered. But yeah, just think about the different reasons why you would use one or the other. All right, so has everybody gone in and added in, or kind of played around with the list a little bit more? There is still time through this class. If you have any questions about how to use lists, numbered or bulleted lists in Microsoft Word, please ask them. There'll also be time near the end of the class where I'll be able to take some more questions. If you want me to be able to come back and kind of show some of these things here, let me know. But for now, we're actually going to be moving on. We're going to start looking at some of the variety of different skills that you'll need to do when you're working with a long document. So, I mean, this here shopping list, this was less than a page. It's something very easy. We can actually see it all on one screen. But some of the things to start thinking about when you're starting to work with a document that is 15, 20, 30, 40, 50, 300 pages long. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to the long document that I provided for all of you, which is the text of Alice in Wonderland. So I'm just going to make this a little larger to kind of make it easier to read for everybody. And this is available, once again, if you go to, let me just kind of bring the link back up here again, such if you go to fergusonlibrary.org, make sure I point the right direction, fergusonlibrary.org/online-tech-classes. That will take you to this page here. And you'll want to download, it's going to be this, the second handout here, actually, this Alice in Wonderland practice document. You'll just want to, actually, the easiest thing to do is right-click and do save link as, or if you click on it there, I'm in Microsoft Firefox here, it will offer me the option to just open right up into Word in there. So you'll want to work with the Alice in Wonderland practice document. And I realized I forgot to mention at the start of the class that, I am working with Word 365 here. Everything that we're doing here is generally the same for Word 365 or Word 2016 or Word 2019. Those are the latest versions of Word. If you are using an older version of Word, if you're using Word 2010 or Word 2013, most of this stuff here should be the same. There should be not a lot of difference, and everything that we're doing is possible in your version of Word. If you are using an older version and you're kind of lost trying to find what you're looking for, let me know in the chat, and it might be just in a different place or organized a little bit differently, and I'll kind of direct you to where you have to go to kind of get to that same thing. That was usually my pre-course spiel, and I kind of forgot about that there. Sorry about that. So, moving on, we're going to be looking at different things of working with a long document. So this document here, for example, is, if I look down at the bottom, this one here is 56 pages long. I mean, Alice in Wonderland is a pretty short book, but it's a long Word document. And so one of the things is that we want to go through is we want to kind of maybe break things up into different pages. So Microsoft Word has two different concepts of breaking up different parts of your document. I don't want to use. I'm kind of being very careful with the terminology I use because Microsoft Word has some specific terminology with this regards. So the first thing is the page separation. And so the page separation, I'm going to actually just zoom out here so you can kind of see how this is. So the page separation is what shows up on a single printed page. So like if I hold this up, like what shows up on a single printed page, the top, the bottom, the page break happens down here at the bottom of the page. So Word separates things by pages, and that's where we get things like the page numbers. It counts the number of physical pages of paper that, if you printed out this document, will come out of your printer. Inside Word, there's also a concept what they call section breaks or sections. And so sections are basically areas of your text that you can have specific formatting. So I'm trying to think of the best way really kind of how to describe this on there and such. So the page break is actually that physical paper page break in your document, whereas a section break is kind of is where you're telling that one part of your document is different than another part of the document for whatever reason. So in this case, with our Alice in Wonderland text here, a good example of a section break is between chapters. Chapters are different sections of the book, and we can break them up internally in the document. Section breaks can be a page break, but doesn't necessarily. And so let me show you what I mean by that there. So the first thing we're going to do actually is we're looking at our top section of of Alice in Wonderland here, and like right up here under this, I have this first introductory thing. So the text for this here comes from Project Gutenberg. Project Gutenberg has been a long running, they're almost 35-year-old, actually not that long, they're about at least 30 years old, online project to bring in a massive collection of public domain books. A really great thing if you're looking for any of the classics out there. They have everything out there. And so we have this little introductory section up here that talks about the text of this book and like where it came from on Project Gutenberg. And I want this to be onto its own page. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my cursor here at the end of the section that I want. I mean, I want everything past this. So this picture and then chapter 1, everything down. I want it to start onto page 2. So I'm putting my cursor right here at the end, and I'm going to zoom in again just so you can kind of make things a little bit more visible. So yeah, so right here I have my cursor flashing right there at the end here. I'm going to come up here to my ribbon, and at the top there, the fifth kind of selection over, you have your file, your home, insert, design, then you have your layout. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on this layout button. It's going to open up the layout tab. And the layout tab is where you're actually able to find the different tools to organize the layout of your document. And you can see right here under my page setup, I have a button up here that says breaks. And if I click on this here, I can see my different types of breaks that I have. And so here's these two types of breaks that I was explaining before. There's a page break. And so the default right up here, page break, marks the point at which one page ends and the next page begins. Once again, it's the physical, like printed paper concept of a page. Down here we have section breaks, and so you can put section breaks where different sections start. You can kind of see we actually have different types of sections here. One of them is a section break and next page, and so what this will do is this will create a page break, but then also create a section break between those. And again, if you're still confused about what the section breaks are, we're going to be doing some stuff and later on through the course of this class, and you'll see how the section breaks affect things. You can also do a continuous section break, which means that you can do a section break in the middle of a page and it won't create a new page. So that's useful for if you do want to have if say you're writing a report and you have section A and then section B, and they kind of the transition that happens in the middle of a page, you don't want section B to go start off on a new page. You can do a continuous section that just happens right in between them there, and just keeps them on the same page, and all it does is just write in a little code into your Microsoft Word document that says section A is up here, section B is down there. They're different sections. They'll get formatted or treated a little bit separately. The even page and the odd page, what these do is these allow you to do a section break and then start the next section either on an even page or odd page. Whether it starts over on page 2 or starts on page 3. And the reason for these here is, again, a layout purpose. Like if you're printing things and you want to be able to have something show up on this side of the book and then something have a blank page over on that side of the book. So you want something to kind of look like this here. We have a blank page on one, and then the text on the other one there, and such. You can do a section break so that it leaves a blank page in between. So these are different things that you can kind of play with as you're working with your different documents and working with your section breaks. To start off, I just want to put a page break here. I don't want to break sections. I'm just going to put a page break in here. So I'm going to come up to breaks. I'm going to enter, and we're just going to hit page. And there's these other types of breaks here. We're not going to really get into these in the course of the class. Right now, we're just going to look at page break. And you can kind of see what it's done now is here's my introductory text, the start, that kind of gives a little bit of information about the what they call the metadata about the book. And then it gives all of this white space, and you can kind of see right now the separation between first page and second page, and starts this section, this image that I had there, right over onto the second page. So the page break did exactly what it did, was that it inserted a page break right where I told it to do. And so it basically said, okay, make the rest of the page blank and put whatever's afterwards, start that onto a new page. You can also create a page break by using the keyboard shortcut Control-Enter. So I'm going to undo that, so it's back up here. And instead of coming up here and clicking Breaks, Page Break, I'm just going to hold down the Control key on my keyboard, which unfortunately you can't see because you can't see my keyboard. And then I'm going to hit Enter, and it's going to do the exact same thing. So what I did there was I did the exact same thing as if I come up and hit Breaks, page break. So that's just kind of a convenient keyboard shortcut to kind of keep in mind as you're working in Microsoft Word. Now let's look at section breaks. So what we're going to do is that because Alice in Wonderland is separated into chapters, we're going to use that convenient chapter breakdown and kind of break them into different sections. So what I'm going to do now is, right now, everything is one section from the beginning of the document all the way to the end of the document. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go down and I'm going to find where chapter 2 is. So right now we're at chapter 1. I'm going to scroll down until I scroll through the pages until I find chapter 2. And so here's chapter 2, and so I have these this little asterisk kind of symbols here kind of indicating the end of the chapter. And so what I'm going to do is right here at the beginning of chapter 2, I'm going to put my cursor at the start of chapter 2. I'm going to come up to breaks, just like I did in the layout tab, and I'm going to come down and I'm going to mark this as a continuous section break. So when I do that there, you'll see nothing changed. This is everything's still on the same page, everything still looks the same. Except if I come back to my home tab and right in the paragraph section here, so we're back in this paragraph section of the home tab, there's this little symbol here. This is actually the paragraph symbol, a paragraph editing symbol. And what this does is this turns on all of these little formatting marks that Microsoft Word uses to determine its formatting that are normally hidden, because we want to be able to see what our document looks like. We don't want to see all this formatting stuff in the background, but sometimes it is useful to kind of see that there. So when I turn this on, you can see now there's this little section right here. Let me see if I zoom in. Does that make that large? Yeah, it does. Okay, so I'm going to zoom in. Actually, it just made it smaller again. Right this section right here, it says section break continuous. And so what that's doing is that's telling me that, hey, there's a section break put into that part of the document. If I go back up to page 1, remember when I put that page break in there? Here's that page break. You can kind of see when I turned on these symbols, that page break shows up right there. Some of the other things that this symbol here kind of shows us is it shows us the ends of paragraphs. So every time that we hit the enter key on our keyboard and created a new line or a new paragraph, you can kind of see it puts that symbol there. And if you look closely in between each word where space is, it puts a little dot. So the dot indicates a space. So if you ever if you ever did your format, you should never do this here, but if you did your formatting where you hit a whole bunch of spaces and things get really kind of messed up and you're trying to figure out how to clean things out there and such, turning on these symbols, you can kind of see where some of these formatting kind of errors get made sometimes. So we're going to get rid of all that there. So going back down to my chapter 2, here we go. You can see I have that section break there. And so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go down to chapter 3 and I'm going to put another section break before chapter 3. Oh, actually, yeah, let me go down and do the chapter 3 section break here. So here's chapter 3. This one here doesn't have the convenient little asterisks kind of telling the difference between the different chapters. I'm going to put my cursor at the start of chapter 3. I'm going to go to my layout tab. I'm going to go to breaks and I'm going to hit continuous. And you can see once again it has this little dotted line. There's not enough space here to write continuous break there before it hits the margin, but I can see that it's there. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to give you about, we'll say 5 minutes. Go into your Alice in the Wonderland document, and what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to do a page break right after this first section, right up here at the top, right before this first picture. So put in a page break by putting your mouse at the end of where it says rgs at cs.cmu.eu. At the end of this email address, put your cursor there, go to the layout tab, go to breaks, and hit page break, and that'll add in a page break there. And then what you're going to want to do is you want to go to the start of each chapter, with the exception of chapter 1, because chapter 1's already in its own break. So go to start at chapter 2. Click at the start of the chapter heading there. Going to go in and add in a continuous break before, and do that for 4 or 5 chapters. Go through up to about chapter 4 or 5. Add in a continuous break. I'll give you about 5 minutes to do that there, and then we'll come back and we'll look at kind of the next thing that we'll work on. for that there. If you have any questions, please ask them in the chat. Whether you have questions about page breaks, continuous breaks, or actually how to do this again, you want me to demonstrate again, let me know. Okay, just about another minute. Let me know if you need more time or if you have questions about this. Okay, so has everybody gone in and put in section breaks at the start of each of the different chapters and put a page break over at the beginning? Now I realize I'm going to get my exercises a little bit out of order because I kind of forgot to show you a step, but we'll do that kind of all together, the next thing there and such. So let me actually show you kind of what this work with creating the section breaks has done. So one of the things that people like to do in Microsoft Word occasionally is to divide things up into two different columns. Now, if I had just opened up this document and made it all two columns, it would have been two columns all the way from the very beginning all the way to the end. But what happens, for example, if I want to make just chapter 2 into 2 columns? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to scroll down here to chapter 2. So where are we at chapter? Okay, so here's chapter 2 again. So I'm going to put my cursor in chapter 2. It doesn't matter where in chapter 2 I'm going to put it, just as long as it's somewhere inside the text. And right here, I'm still in my layout tab on my ribbon. So you can see right up here on layout, right next to my section with the breaks, there is a columns category. So I'm going to come here, I'm going to click on columns. I'm going to be able to choose how many columns I want to make. I'm going to do 2 columns right now. And so now you can see now it's separated chapter 2 and chapter 3 into columns. But if I scroll up back to chapter 1, you'll see that chapter 1 is still 1 column. If I scroll down to the end of chapter 2, to where I get to chapter 3, because remember I made chapter 3 a different section, you can see now chapter 3 went back to being a single column. So by marking each of the individual chapters, if I come here into chapter 3 and I decide, you know what, so chapter 1 is 1 column, chapter 2 is 2 columns. This is Alice in Wonderland. Let's have a little bit of whimsy. Chapter 3, let's make it 3 columns. And so now you can see actually now chapter 3, if I go down, is now broken into 3 different columns. And actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to zoom out so you can kind of see this more visually. There's chapter 3 as 3 columns. Here's chapter 2 as 2 columns. And so I'm able to have those different columns, and where the columns start and end is exactly where I told the section to start and end. So if I go down and get to where chapter 4 is, right here, here's chapter 4, you can kind of see my 3 columns end and it goes back to a single column. I can now make chapter 4, following my whole thing that I'm doing, I can make this into 4 columns. There we go. So now chapter 4 is in 4 columns. It's not very readable because 4 columns is a little absurd with the setup that I have here. I'm going to actually make that back to 1 column. But the chapters or the sections allowed me to treat that different formatting differently in each section. I can do something, for example, like in this section here, in this page, I can actually make the orientation of this here landscape. And you can see now actually what it did because I was in the section that I made. Because sometimes when you say do a report for work, you're going to have your text of your document. You're going to have your text going through. And then what you're going to do is you're going to have, say, like a report. You're going to pull in a report from Microsoft Excel. You can have a graph or a chart or something on there such. And maybe it looks too squished if your paper is portrait. But you could then turn the paper sideways and make it landscape. And the way that you would do that is that you would put that report or graph or that table or graph into its own section. So you would put a section break before and after, and then you can make that specific part of your document. You can change it from being portrait or like the tall, long, with the long sides on the top and bottom into landscape, where your long sides of your sheet are on or portrait is the long sides on the left or right. Portrait or landscape is the long sides on the top and bottom. So section breaks allow you to do some of those key formatting changes. It determines when columns start and end. When you do a column break, how it begins and ends. Also allows you to do things like changing orientations. I believe we could also do different margins in different sections. Yes, so you can kind of see if you need to have an area that you have narrower or wider margins, however you want to adjust your margins, you can do a section break and it will only affect that section that you're currently in. So you can kind of see chapter 2 still has my original standard margins that I have in my document. But chapter 3, I just gave it narrow margins, and that will continue all the way down to when chapter 4 starts, because I set chapter 4 as a different section. I can go back here, we can make this portrait again, and you can kind of see, once again, I have very narrow margins here compared to what I had in chapter 2. So those are just kind of different ways, those are kind of the different uses that you can use the different sections and why they're useful. They allow you to have flexibility on how the actual like physical formatting of your text is organized into different sections. If you want your entire text to be organized everything the same, you'll put everything will just be in one section. But if you are going to want to be able to kind of fine tune that there, if you find you do need a place where you need to have a page that is landscape, or you need to break a certain part of your text into columns like we did here, you can put that into its own section, and those kind of things won't affect the rest of your document. So any questions? Does that make sense to everybody? Let me know in the comments, or if you have any questions about that there in the chat, and then we can get moving on to, or actually, you know what, let me know if you have any questions. I'm going to give you about 3 minutes. Go and practice this yourself. You've gone in and you've added in section breaks to everything. So what you're going to do is click into any of the chapters, chapter 2, chapter 3, chapter 4. In your layout tab, go and play around with the different columns. And then you can also play around with things like orientation there too. So spend about 3 minutes kind of doing that there, and then we're going to move on and look at how to make a table of contents for your document. If you have questions, ask me in the chat, and good luck. Have fun. All right, so as people had some time going in and changing columns and changing page orientation, and just kind of seeing how the section breaks work in Microsoft Word. Very good. So now what we're going to do is we're going to look at another common thing that people want to do that is not part of the simple skills of Microsoft Word, and that is creating a table of contents. So in order to create a table of contents, you actually have to use styles. If you remember from my class last week when I was teaching about intermediate Microsoft Word, I taught you about how to use the different styles. Now, here I'm back in the Home tab of my ribbon, and so all the different styles on here. And so the table of content relies on things being marked as headings. So you can see if I open up my styles here, I have a heading 1 and a heading 2, and there's a heading 3 here too. So those points there, these are the key styles that Microsoft Word's table of content is looking for. So how does it work? Well, the first thing I'm going to do actually is I'm going to go in and I'm going to add in a page numbers to my documents here, or to my document. And if you remember from what we did last week, is I'm going to double click on the bottom of the page. So I'm now in my footer section here, and you can actually see once I'm in here, this tells me this is footer section 1, header section 1. If I go down to where chapter 2 was, you can see I get section 2. It actually notes when section 2 is there. And so you can actually do different headers and footers in the different sections. So, for example, like a lot of documents, a typical design for a document is that you have your title page, you have your table of contents, and then you might have like a preface or a foreword or an introduction. And those initial pages, before you get to page 1 of your document, those initial pages are usually numbered with Roman numerals. So it would be usually like lowercase Roman numeral 1, 2, 3, on until it gets to the end of that section. And then when you get to the start of your actual text, page 1 of your actual text, the numbering will start back again at number page 1, and it will use Arabic numerals. And so you can actually use sections to kind of make that happen too. We're not going to really kind of go into this class, but it's something you can kind of play around with if you're ever looking at how to do different numbering styles, whether it be have letters or Roman numerals and then go on to Arabic numerals. You can do that with the section breaks that we just looked at. What I'm going to do down here in my footer section is I'm just going to go in. I'm in my footer section. I'm going to come here to page, and I'm going to do bottom of page, and I'm just going to put right there at the bottom right, and I think it should continue. Yeah, okay. Actually, just make sure it continues on to page section 2. Yeah, okay. Continue on to section 2. And I mean, here you can actually see right now it's set the same as previous, but I can then go in and change that if I wanted to at this point, but we're not going to in this class. And the reason I just put in the page numbers is just so that we have kind of a convenient guide to the page numbers when we create a table of contents, because that's what a table of contents is supposed to do. It's supposed to tell you where a heading or a section or a chapter starts, what page number, and it just makes it easy to find that way. So I've gone in, I've added my page numbers, and now what I'm going to do is I'm going to start marking what I want to show up in my table of contents. And I'm going to do that by marking things with a style. So I'm going to come here where it says chapter 1. I'm going to highlight chapter 1. Actually, what I'm going to do is I actually want these here to kind of be on the same line. So I'm going to come here at the beginning, down to the rabbit hole. This is just a formatting thing. You can kind of do whatever you want. I'm just going to do chapter 1, down the rabbit hole. And I'm going to make this whole thing here. I'm going to come up and I'm going to mark this as heading 1. And then we're going to go down and we're going to go find chapter 2. And we're going to do the same thing with chapter 2. I'm going to go up to about chapter 5. So here's chapter 2. I'm going to bring this back up to here, put a colon, and I'm going to highlight this. I'm going to mark it as heading 1. Go down and find chapter 3. And I'm going to do the same thing. So here's chapter 3, a caucus race and a long tail. I'm going to highlight that whole title for the chapter and the chapter 3 and mark that as heading 1. So I'm going through and marking where it says chapter 3 and the chapter title. I'm marking that all as heading 1. The reason why I'm actually, I'm going to go down to page or chapter 4 and I'll explain. So the reason why I'm taking this line, the chapter title, and putting it back up there is that if I marked these both as heading 1, they'll show up as a double entry in the table of contents. The heading 1 will show chapter 4, and then it will then show also on that same thing, it will show the rabbit sends in a little bill. By putting them here onto the same line, because there's not like an enter or a carriage return in between, or like a what they call a paragraph break in between them there and such, it will see them together as the same line. Now, if I wanted to, say, have chapter 4, like suppose these chapters were long enough, and I had chapter 4, and then there was section 1, 2, and 3, and I had a heading in it that says section 1, section 2, section 3, the way that I would organize that for my table of contents is I would say chapter 4, I would make that a heading 1, and then when I come down to section 2 or section 1, I'd make that a heading 2. And you can actually have the table of contents differentiate between a heading 1 and heading 2 and organize the table of contents like that there. So like heading, just like when we were looking at our bulleted lists at the start of the class, the table of contents can do that same thing. It can have different tiers in the table of contents based on if you're using heading 1 or heading 2. Since this is a simpler document, we're not doing that though. We're just marking all of this here as heading 1. So I'm going to go down and I'm going to do one more for chapter 5. Once I find it. There we go. So chapter 5, I'm going to take advice from a caterpillar. Going to colon space and make that heading 1. So I'm going to give everybody here about, let's say 4 minutes. Go into your document. And what we're going to do is you're going to go in and you're going to mark, you're going to go to each chapter start. So where it says chapter 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. take the title that was down on, that's usually on the line below, backspace that back up to the same line above, add a colon or whatever organize. You can do a dash, however you want to. You can actually, I could just make this a space. You can organize. You can do it however you want, but make sure that they're on the same line. Highlight them and mark them as heading 1. Do that for the first 4 or 5 chapters. You don't have to go through the whole document. We just want some of those chapters to work with. And then when you're all set, in about 4 minutes, we'll look at the next step of creating a table of contents. If you have questions, ask me in the chat. If you want me to demonstrate again, let me know in the chat. So just another couple of minutes. Let me know if you have any questions or you need a little bit more time. Thank you. Okay, so has everybody gone through and marked their chapter headings with as heading 1? Now we're going to go in and we're going to look at the next step to create a table of contents. So the first thing you have to do when you create a table of contents, you have to find a place to put it. Conveniently, when we started off working with this document here, we created this big bunch of white space up here on page 1. So we're going to use some of that there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up here to the end, and I'm going to hit just enter a couple of times, just go down to a new line. And you'll notice actually, because remember we put in a page break there. By putting enter, it's kind of just pushing that page break down. So what happens is you can see I'm not entering added space down here. It's not, every time I hit enter, it's not moving this down. what it's doing is it's actually moving that page break line that we saw. Let me actually turn it on. You can actually see there's that page break. If I hit enter, it just moves that page break down. So all it does is just change the amount of white space between this and the next page break without changing the rest of my document. That's why you want to use the page break here instead of hitting enter a bunch of times to go down to a new line. Because if you do that there, you're creating new lines in there instead of just creating blank white space. And so those lines can kind of mess up your formatting in the future when you're trying to work with things. So kind of think about when you're working with like a long document, you want to be thinking at the beginning how you want to break things up and how you want to organize your pages and your sections and your chapters. And you don't want to create additional white space. So a good rule of thumb when you're working in Microsoft Word is that you don't want to use enter to kind of make new blank white space in a document, or use spaces to kind of move things over and line things up, because depending on how you change fonts or change design or add in text or something, these kind of hard-coded in white space creators can actually end up being more of a disaster than creating than just doing like the proper tools like page breaks or using tabs or indents on there. Now, in this case, I do want to create just a little bit of manual white space between the end of my document up there and where I want to put my table of contents. So hitting enter here a couple of times is fine. But you can see it doesn't affect the rest of my document under here. So I've gone to the end of my introductory. I've hit enter a couple times and come down to here. So now I'm going to go into, on my tab, on my ribbon up here, right next to the layout tab is a references tab. So we're going to come here into references, and references gives us things like if you're doing research and writing academic papers, this is where you have things like your footnotes, your citations and biographies, indexing, all of this stuff. If you're writing for like legal review or writing like law documents, there's the table of authorities. This is about the only ones that really kind of use this area. All of this is in here. But the bit that we want to look at here is in the top left, right over here, the table of contents. And so what we're going to do is now that I found where I want to put my table contents here, I'm going to click on Table of Contents. And you can see actually now as I get a selection of different tables of contents, built-in kind of things. I can go in, I can design a custom one if I want to. For this case, we're just going to use actually one of these automatic ones. There isn't... I'm going to actually have the one here that says Table of Contents. We're going to choose Automatic Table 2. And you can kind of see it says Heading 1, Heading 2, Heading 3. So if we had gone in and we had made, like if again, when I was talking about my description of using Chapter 4 that had then Sections 1, 2, or Sections A, B, and C under Chapter 4, I could have made Chapter 4, the Chapter 4 heading, make that Heading 1. And then I can do Section A, make that Heading 2. If there was, say, a Section A1, like it got even broken down even further, I could make that Heading 3, and I could have all of those different places show up on my table of contents. And you can see there would be a line like this here. So Heading 1, everything, like all the Chapter 1s here would be all the way to the left, whereas like then the section headings would be indented in slightly, and then the sections of sections would be. So it's something to play around with. Again, part of my philosophy when it comes to learning and working with Microsoft Word or any Microsoft Office document, get in there and play around with yourself. This this Alice in Wonderland document here is free for you to use. Go in, practice these things, try out different things. What happens when we mark something as Heading 2 or Heading 1? Or Heading 3, how does it behave when you create the table of contents? In this case, we've marked everything as Heading 1 because it's the top level. I'm just going to click on this table of contents, and you'll see it'll automatically insert in the table of contents here. Here's Chapter 1, Down the Rabbit Hole, Chapter 2, The Pool of Tears, Chapter 3. You can see when I click on it, everything gets selected. This is kind of its own separate object on there. I can't really go in and edit these different items here individually. If I wanted to change these, I'd have to go change them in my document and then update the table. And I'll show that here, actually, how that works. If I wanted to change like what these titles say. But then they do the classic table of contents. You have the dotted lines going across and all the numbers kind of lined up over here on the right. It automatically creates that different space depending on how long my chapter chapter titles are. The page numbers here all line up to where the page they actually start. One of the neat things is that because this actually gets created as like an HTML document in Microsoft Word, this table of contents actually works for navigation. So you can see when I put my mouse over, say, chapter 2 here, it says control click to follow link. So if I hold down my control button and click, you can see actually as soon as I press down my control button, it changes my cursor from the insert cursor, this little typical Word insert cursor here. It changes it to the little pointer hand. I click on that, and what it'll do now is it will jump down to where page 2 was. Now, granted, there's not an easy way to get back without scrolling back, but it allows me to jump down to that part of the page. So you can kind of see when I clicked on chapter 2, it brought me down here to chapter 2. I'm going to go back up to the top of my document. Oop. And if I do the same, if I want to go down to chapter 4, I can control click on chapter 4, and it will jump me down to that part of the document. So I have made my table of contents, and it really is as straightforward as mark your chapter headings with the style. So heading 1, 2, or 3, depending on what you want to do. Come here to the References tab. Over on the left, you have Table of Contents. We're going to come over, you're going to click on Table of Contents, and you're going to choose the style of content that you want. And you could actually get pretty elaborate. You can design new ones if you want to. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you about 3 minutes. Go back into your Word document there. Go up to the very first page where we had this introductory text and we inserted it in that page break in there. At the end there, hit enter a couple times just to kind of give yourself a little bit of space to kind of create the document there, or create your table of contents. Go to the References tab, click Table of Contents, and for this case, choose Automatic Table 2. Let me know if it looks any different if you're using an older version of Word, or if you have any questions or problems, or it doesn't end up working properly. Let me know, and we can I can walk through the different steps again. So take about 3 minutes and do that there, and then we'll look at what happens to be able to adjust, or kind of what happens when we work with the table of contents. Why are we using this built-in table of contents instead of manually creating one? And I'll show you that in just a second. So take about 3 minutes and do that. Let me know if you have questions. All right, so has everybody gone and created their table of contents? I don't see any questions, so I'm assuming that people are successful with this. So now we're going to look at what happens if you want to make changes or additions to your table of contents. What happens there? Like, what happens if we go in and add in like a whole new bunch of text? What happens to the page numbers? What happens if we add in, say, a whole new chapter right in the middle of our document? How does that affect our table of contents? So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go down into my document and I'm going to just choose, actually, let's use this caption here for White Rabbit checking watch. Let's pretend that this is a new chapter that we put into this document here. We wrote a new chapter and we stuck it in there, and this is our chapter heading. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in and I'm going to highlight it just like I did with all of my other chapter headings. I'm going to come in and I'm going to mark it as a heading 1. Boop. Interesting enough, it looks different than all my other heading ones. I don't actually, you know what? Yeah, let's actually not do it for that caption there. I think something's playing around with that a little strangely. Let me just go in and I'm going to actually just choose a random line in my chapter 1 here. I'm going to go down here and choose, well, thought Alice to herself, after such a fall as this, I shall think nothing of tumbling downstairs. So we're going to choose this line and I'm going to mark it as heading 1. Interesting enough, it still doesn't look the same as the other heading ones, and that's just probably some weird design kind of thing, but it's still marked as a heading 1. And that's what's important for Microsoft Word. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back up to my table. So now I've added in a new heading 1. I'm going to come up here. I'm going to select my table. So I'm going to click in it. I'm going to go back to my References tab up here on the top. And right next to where we created the table of contents, there is this button that says Update Table. So the table of contents does not update automatically. It's not dynamic. It's created, it's put into place, and then you just have to tell Word to kind of go in and recalculate and remake it. And you do that by clicking this Update Table button here. So I'm going to click on this, and I get this little option here. It's like Update Table of Contents. And you can either update page numbers only, which means that if you've just gone in and you've just added new stuff, you haven't really added any new chapters, you haven't added anything that would get added included in the table of contents. You haven't added a new chapter heading or a new section heading. If you can do update page numbers only, and what it'll do is it'll go through and just make sure that all the page numbers match up to where they are. Or you can do update entire table. In this case, because we want to add something into our table of contents, we want to update the entire table. So I'm going to select update entire table. I'm going to hit OK. And now you can see it's now added in this new line. Well, thought Alice to herself, but there's that line that I highlighted and made heading 1, and it's added it into our table of contents, right in between chapter 1 and chapter 2 at page 3, because that's where it lives. So now I decided, oh wait, this really is, I didn't want to have this in my table of contents. I selected the wrong line. I don't like this on there. So I'm going to go down. I'm going to go find that line. There it is. And I'm going to go back in, and I'm just going to make it normal again. Normal. And so now it's no longer a heading 1. I'm going to come back up to my table, go to the References tab, click Update Table, update the entire table, and now it's gone. I'm back to just the things that I selected before. Now what happens if we go in and we push something onto a new page? So I'm going to go in and like right here, I'm going to actually go in and I'm going to hit, I'm going to insert a page break. I'm not going to insert a section break. I'm going to do that page break like we did at the beginning. Go in, insert page break, just so it pushes this down to a new line and should push a lot of other stuff down. Actually, you know, I'm going to add in another page break because I just want to add in a blank page just to kind of mess up the numbering that my other chapters were on. So I've added in like a new page into there. So now if I go back up, these numbers here are no longer accurate. Chapter 1 probably still starts on chapter 2, but if I control click down to chapter 2, here I'm on chapter 2, you can see now chapter 2 is on page 7. It's no longer on page 6 like my table of contents said. I'm going to go back up to my table of contents. I'm going to click on it, go to my References tab, just like I did with when I added something into there. I'm going to do my Update Table, just like I did before. And instead of doing Update Entire, I could do an Update Entire Table and it would fix it. But in this case, I only need to update the page numbers. So I'm going to keep that selected. I'm going to hit OK. And now you can see now it's updated the numbers to match the current reality of our document. So what I really wanted to show you there was that once you create the table of contents, it's not dynamic. It won't automatically update as you continue working on your document. If you go in and make edits and changes, you'll have to come in and just do this update table to kind of make sure that everything gets kind of updated correctly. Let me know if that makes sense, or if you have any other questions. Feel free to ask them in the chat. You don't have to go do this yourself. You can if you want to practice it a bit, but we're going to kind of move on to the last part of what we're looking at in this class, and that's how to start working collaboratively with other people. So I'm going to just wait I'm going to wait about a minute or so just to see if there's any questions about this, and then we'll kind of move on to working collaboratively with in Microsoft Word. Okay, so it seems like everybody is on board with that. If you do have questions, you can ask them at the end of the class. I'll give time for there to be able to demonstrate or show things again. So when it comes to Microsoft Word, one of the things that's improved over time with Microsoft Word is how you can work with other people in Microsoft Word. Because the thing is we're not, unless you're like there are people who sit and do all of the work by themselves. They're the only ones working with the Microsoft Word documents. Most cases, that's actually going to be what you're going to be doing in Microsoft Word. You're creating something that only you will be working on and editing that document. But there are times that will come around where you will need to work with other people on like a singular document, whether you have a couple people writing it, you have an editor, you have a boss that wants to go in and kind of make changes or something on there. And there are different tools that Microsoft Word gives or allows for people working on these documents. This especially becomes useful in these times when we are all separated back into our homes or not in our workplaces, unless you are in your workplaces, which stay safe, please. But we need to be able to work collaboratively in a digital fashion. We can't really, say, print out the documents and make handwritten notes on there that we then give back to the colleague to make the changes. So in this section here, we're going to look at three different things. The first thing that we're going to look at is we're going to look at the track changes system, where you're actually able to go in and make changes to a document. It's like you make these changes as suggestions, or you can add comments about a different thing. So to start off, we're going to close our Alice in Wonderland document. We no longer need this open. You can save it, don't save it, however you want to do. And we're going to go back to, if you haven't gotten it already, we're going to go back to the online-tech, fergusonlibrary.org/online-tech-classes at the Advanced Microsoft Word tab. And we're going to download this third handout here. That's the Advanced Microsoft Word Practice document. And what that will do is that will open up, no, not that document, that was the one we started off with. It's going to open up this document, which is just a brief letter that I've kind of put together to with some different changes visible on here. So track changes is first available through the review tab on the ribbon. So if we look up here on the top, when we open up a Word document, we're of course in the home. Way over here to the right, it's like the third one from the right, is the review tab. When I go to the review tab, this is where we find different tools like our spell check and our word count, things like read aloud. There's a bunch of different kind of tools that at least I have here in Office 365 that kind of built in, things like translation and language. But the important things that we want to look at is right here in the middle. There's right over here on the right middle, we have this tracking section, and then right over to the left we have comments. And you can see right now, when over here in the tracking section, the track changes on here should be lit up. Mine's, it's highlighted with gray. If yours might be a different color depending on what theme or anything that you have set up on there. You'll also note that as in the document underneath here, there are different things like these lines here mark where there's different changes that have happened. So we have a comment over here. We have another comment over here. And so these are kind of, if I put my mouse over it, it highlights what that comment is actually referring to. So these are things, this document was written, and then I went in and added in these comments. With track changes turned up here, actually show, just trying to make sure that we're seeing this, they've changed this slightly. I'll mark up. Okay, there we go. Okay, so yeah, so there's different views here, and this used to actually say different things. Like it used to say like final, and then final with changes, original, and they've changed this here. So like the original, this is the original document. This is what it looked like when it was first written up. Then we have things like no markup. So these are all the changes that I've added in, but doesn't show like who made the changes or how that or what got changed. So those are the two kind of the opposites, the kind of the ends of the spectrum of how the markups get shown. There's what the original looked like without any changes, and then there's the what it looks like at the end after all of the changes, but you don't get to see what those individual changes were. Then there's all markup, which shows all the different individual changes that got made. And this is actually the view that I really wanted to kind of show. You can kind of see that like this line up here, dear purchasing matter, everything that's in red is what got changed or added to this document or removed from the document. So the fact that when the change got made, I added in this line, dear purchasing manager. And you can see if I put my mouse over it, there's a comment asking, do we want to personalize this from our database? Do we want to do a mail merge to kind of pull this into there? So I'm kind of communicating back with my comment back to the writer. Is this something that we want to consider? But when I added this line in, it made it red to kind of say, okay, this is different than the rest of the text. This wasn't in the original. It's a suggested change in there. You can see down here, I corrected the spelling of the word sources. So if I go back and look at the original, you can see, actually, I'm going to zoom in to make this a little easier to read. You can see that the word sources is spelt wrong. So I went in and I deleted that and typed in the correct spelling. And you can kind of see, here's the wrong spelling crossed out saying, here's the suggestion. Delete that wrong word, and here's the correct word typed in. Over here, there was an additional TO added, and there was a duplicated TO on there. And so I just deleted one. So the edit is showing remove one of those extra TOs. The word committed was spelt wrong. So here's a correction on there. Here's a comment. Okay, here's at this point here, let's add in something to it's like I want you as the writer to go back and add some things into this section here. So I've added a comment to say that there. And then going down, like here, we look at the sentence here. The sentence, like the telephone number, originally had parentheses, and what I did was I erased the parentheses and added in a dash for that there. It's a little hard to read because of all things being crossed out with the symbols, but if you receive a document that somebody has gone through, like you've written a document, so you suppose you were the original writer of this document, and then you sent it off to an editor or a colleague, here, look this over, let me know what changes I need to make. They'll go in, they'll make track changes, and then they can go in and they can start making the changes. So like we go here and I can, as you can see, when I add in the word there, it adds it in. It keeps my original word there. It keeps all of my original text in place, just puts in the suggestion. I'm going to get rid of that because we don't need that there. And then once they're done, they'll save it. They'll send it back to you. And you'll notice right over here next to the tracking section, there is a changes section. And so what this does is you'll start off at the beginning of the document. So I'll click right here at the beginning where it says Dear Purchasing Manager. And now you can actually accept or reject the changes. So if I click accept, what it'll do is say, okay, we're going to accept the addition of Dear Purchasing Manager. You can see now it's changed from red text to black text because now it's become part of the actual text of the document. And then it's moved on to the next thing. The next thing I have here is the comment. And it's like, okay, should we try to personalize it? I can actually write a reply to the comment here, or I can just accept it. It's like, okay, yep, okay, move on. And then it'll move on to the next thing. And so the next change, so again, the track changes is tracking the different changes that got made to the document. So now the next change was correcting the spelling here. As the original writer, I'm looking at it, okay, yeah, that's right. I misspelled that there. Let's go with the original, and I'll accept that correction in the misspelling. Well, actually, what I'll do is it accepted deleting the misspelled word, and now I have to accept entering the correctly spelled word. and then it moves down to here. We're going to accept removing that. And so you can accept or reject. Like suppose, let's accept this, accept that, and then here we have this other comment here about let's add our eco-friendly bamboo sources, whatever they are. I can decide I can reject that, and I say, okay, nope, I don't like that comment. We're not going to go. This is not my intentional when I wrote this here. So you can accept or reject. So the editing, the track changes, and the editing going and such are just suggestions until you accept or reject them there. Move on to the next. Accept this, accept that. I don't know why. There we go. And accept that. There we go. So now I've accepted all of the different changes, and it brings me back up to the top. To make changes, if somebody sends you a document that you want to edit or make changes to, what you'll do is you'll open it up. You'll probably be in the Home tab here. You go to Review, and you'll click on Track Changes. You'll just click it on. So like right now it's off. Now it's on, so you can see it's selected. So then anything I make, if I go in and I am adding a sentence here, you can see it's keeping it in red text, and the color of the text will vary based on how many people are editing it. So if I sent this on to a third person, and they went in and looked at it and such, their changes or suggestions might be a different color. That might be like blue or green or purple. It might be a different color how it shows up in there. And then what happens is I make whatever changes I need to do, and then I send it back to the original writer or onto the next person in the workflow. Okay, here's the changes, and then they go through and accept or make the changes as necessary. If I want to add a comment, I can highlight what I want to comment. So like if I don't like this phrasing when we select our product, I can highlight it and I can do, hey, I want to do a new comment. And so now you can see it's added in a comment section over here on the margin on the right, and I can say, I am adding a comment about this phrase. And you can put whatever comment. And the comments can be as long as short as you want them to be. But then when the writer or the next person in your workflow sees this here and such, they'll see that this comment here is linked to this set of text rather than being about some other text that shows up in your document. Does that make sense for everybody? You can. So what I do is let's take about 2 minutes, because it doesn't take long to go through and accept changes. Go to the MS Word Advanced Practice doc that you got from the web page right here. Open it up in your Word. You're going to want to go to the Review tab. Make sure that Track Changes are on. Start at the first change. So right up here, that first change is going to be Dear Person Manager, and then practice going through accepting and rejecting the changes and kind of see how things work. As you're working on that there, look at this section over here and see what you're looking at. Are you looking at all markup? Look at what the original, look at the no markup. See those different changes and how it looks on the document. So take about 2 minutes and do that. If you have questions, let me know. And then we're going to look at kind of different file formats. Okay, so the next thing we're going to look at is when you work with Microsoft Word with other people, one thing to kind of keep in mind always is the file format that you're working with. Now, it's pretty easy if you know that everybody that you're working with is using Microsoft Word. But at this point, as I've even mentioned in this class a couple times, there is kind of a variety of different versions of Word out. The Word I'm using here is Word 365. In the last 15 years, I've used Word 2003, I've used Word 2007, I've used Word 2010, 2013, 2016, 2019. There's a lot of different versions of Word out there. Now, back in 2006, yeah, it was Office 2007 that made the big change. So when Windows Vista came out, Microsoft released Word 2007 or Office 2007 to pair along with Windows Vista. And when they released that there, one of the big changes they made beyond the interface, because it was Office 2007 that added the ribbon, this whole section up here on the top, and changed the navigation that we've been used to for so long. It used to be everything was like menus, and you would open up the menu and choose things from drop-down menus. So that interface was a big change, but even bigger was that they created a new file format because they had gotten too limited by the old file formats that were in Microsoft Office. So you'll notice that the document that we're working at here, like anything that we create in Microsoft Word in these newer versions, gets saved as a .docx file. You can kind of see that in my title up here. Unfortunately, I can't make it any larger, but if you look on your own Microsoft Word, you'll see that up there at the top it says .docx. Prior to that everything made in Word was a .doc. And they did that to be able to kind of add in more functionality, make things allow them to do more powerful tools to make things easier to do more stuff in Microsoft Word and kind of modernize it, make it a more modern file format. Depending on who you're working with, some people may not have access to a program that can read .docx. Not as much true nowadays, but there's still some people that might have that kind of issue. Or you may want to be able to share a document in a way that nobody's able to change it. You just want them to be able to see the document and read it and print it exactly as you've made it without being able to edit or make it changes. So you can do that by changing the file format that you share it with other people. So we do that there. If we go up here to our file menu and we go down to Save As, so we're in this backstage view. Remember the backstage view from Basic Word when we started talking about there? I'm going to go to Save As. And under the Save As menu, so I'm up here, here's where my file is going to get saved, here's my file name, and then right down here, it's telling me that it's saving it as a Word document, star.docx. So this is the default, the basic Word document when you save it. If I click this here, you can see I have a lot of different formats I can choose. So for example, there's one, if I come down here, this third one down, it says Word 97 to 2003.doc. This is that old-fashioned Microsoft Word document that if somebody you know never bought an older version of Word, they're still using Word 2003 or, God forbid, something even earlier, they won't be able to open up the .docx file. So you can go and you can save it as this older .doc file and send it to them, and then they'll be able to open it up in their older version of Office. So that's one format that you want to kind of keep in mind when you're working with other people and sending things out to, depending on if they let you know that, hey, I wasn't able to open that there because I have such an old version of Word, you can go back and you can save it as .doc. Moving further down the menu option here, we have PDF. Now, this was something that thankfully got added in around, again, Office 2007, was the ability to save things as PDFs. Prior to Office 2007, you needed to have specialized software to create PDFs. You still need to have some specialized software to be able to do some more of the useful stuff in PDFs, but you can still make you can design your Microsoft Word document, and you can save it as a PDF to send somebody just by coming here and selecting PDF and then saving it. And it will save it as a new file. And in fact, that is what I've done with the exercise document that you have here. This I made up in Word. I actually typically have it living as a Word document, but in order to share it, make it easier for you to be able to see during this class, I've made it a PDF because it opens up in a separate program, so it's not in the way when you're trying to do other Word things. It'll also open up in your web browser, usually easier. So the PDF allows it to be opened up on any computer. People don't have to have Microsoft Office. Almost everybody today is able to open up a PDF document. So if you're sending your document to somebody else, or you're working with somebody else on something, and you want them to be able to read the document, and you're not certain about what software they have, if they're going to have access to Word, or for example, if you're sending it, you want them to be able to read it on like a phone on there, you can save it as a PDF, send it as the PDF, and they'll be able to read it on whatever device, wherever they're looking at it. Generally, they'll be able to open a PDF document. It's become so ubiquitous that it's able to be read across every platform pretty easily. In fact, a lot of web browsers nowadays just view the PDF right in the web browser to even simplify that step. The other advantage to a PDF document is that the person looking at it, unless they have the specialized software to change PDFs, they can't make changes. So they're going to be able to see exactly the file that you sent them without being able to make changes to it. So that's convenient for things like contracts or invoices. You send it to them there, and then they can't make changes or edits to that file there. They can print it out, they can maybe sign it, scan it, and send it back, but they can't go in and change the text of it there. So if you wanted to be able to send the document on to somebody and not allow them to make any changes, the easiest way to do that is as a PDF file. Save as a PDF and send them that PDF file. You're certain they're going to be able to read it, and you're also going to be able to make sure that they can't make any changes or edits to that document. They're going to get it exactly as you sent it to them. Unless they have something like Adobe Acrobat, or they use, there are conversion softwares out there. There's websites that you can convert from a PDF to a Word document. And somebody who's really motivated will be able to do it. But for most cases, most things, if you want the document to go out just exactly as you sent it, you can then save it as the PDF. The other ones that might be kind of useful to kind of know is moving down further. We have this rich text format and plain text. These here are very basic formats without a lot of formatting. Rich text formatting is going to be able to keep things like bold and italics. We'll keep paragraph breaks. Might keep things like bulleted lists and numbered lists that we worked on at the beginning of this class, but a lot of extra formatting that happens in a Word document, a lot of hidden formatting that happens in a Word document disappear. Things like page breaks may not happen. Section breaks disappear. Images don't show up in rich text format. So rich text format is just text, but it's formatted. So you're able to do bold, italic, underline. Plain text loses all of the formatting. So anything that's bold, underline, different colors, different headings, different sizes, all of that disappears in plain text. So it's a great way. These are useful file formats if you're looking to work with just the text of a document and the formatting is getting in the way. So let's look at our Alice in Wonderland document again. We have all of those different pictures and web links. There's some web links that showed up in there. And there's some like weird wavy, like at some points there was some like weird wavy text. If I wanted to just work with the text in there and simplify a lot of that extra stuff that happened around there and such, is I can go in and save that as a plain text, and it'll kind of remove a lot of that there. So those are different formats depending on how you want people to be able to interact or work with your Word document. You can choose a different format and save it and send it to them there, or how you save it there. It's also, people might have different programs or different access to different software. So the final thing that we're going to look at in this class, let me again know if you have any questions about the file formats, or it's kind of confusing, or if it makes sense to you, let me know. I can answer some more questions about that. But the final thing that we're going to look at to kind of close out this class is we're actually not going to do it in Microsoft Word, despite the title of this class. So I'm going to actually close my Word documents. Close you. Oh, I just closed my web browser, didn't I? Yes, I did. Haha. Hold on. Let me just open up a new web browser here and go to the fun of doing this all live in live streaming. This is not a recording, at least right now. If you go back and watch the recording, it will be. So we're going to go back to our fergusonlibrary.org/online-tech-classes. And we're going to go back to Advanced Microsoft Word, and we're going to click on this link that's underneath the handout, so above the survey link. It's a little bit hard. It doesn't really stand out as much as the other things do, but it says click here to access the Google Doc practice document for Advanced Microsoft Word. So Google Docs is an online cloud word processor like Microsoft Word, provided for free by Google to anybody that has a Google account, an account with Google. In order to access this here, you don't need to have a Google account. One of the great things about Google Docs is that it's one of the easiest way to collaboratively work with a large number of people at the same time on a document. So that's the thing I really wanted to highlight and kind of show here, is that we're able to all work on this at the same time, and you can actually see the changes people are making in real time. So you're able to share out the document, and Google Docs allows you to share a document in several different ways. You can share it so that people can just view it. They can just look at it, they can print it, but they can't make changes. You can also share it so that anybody who has the link to it, like this here, I shared everybody the link to get to this document here. You can make changes to it. You can do whatever changes you want. So yeah, go ahead. There's a couple of you in here already. Go in and change things, add text, delete things, change colors, do whatever you want to kind of do in here if you want. You'll actually be able to see other people doing the same thing that you're doing. You can also invite certain people. So you can actually send invitation to certain people to be able to either view or edit it on there too. So you get a good amount of control over how you can share this document and what people are able to do to things. Now you can see once we're in, I'm signed in as my account, so my little cursor's up there, but you can actually see a few of it. I can tell that there's 3 of you actually in this class right now, and it kind of assigns these fun little little characters. So there's one of you is an anonymous manatee, another one's an anonymous beaver, and then we have an anonymous jackal. And the colors line up to where your cursors are. So like anonymous manatee, I can see you're right down here doing something. Your cursor's pink. The anonymous beaver is right over here at the end, and yours is this teal color. And then the third one, anonymous jackal, is right up here. And if I click, you'll see my cursor kind of moving around, and I can go in and I can make whatever changes I want. And you can kind of see it's adding in, and you're seeing the changes happening live. This was the thing that it's always kind of fascinating, because usually when you are making changes to a document, I don't know if anybody's ever worked with a document on a network or a shared location where if you open up it in Microsoft Word, if somebody else tries to open it up, that file is locked. They can look at it, but they can't make changes because somebody else already has control of that file and is making changes. In this case here, everybody's able to make changes at the same time. Google cracked that kind of simultaneous working so that everybody's able to work with things. And there are ways, I could probably come in here and start adding into the middle of this feature here. I like it too. So you can see I can actually interact right into the middle there. You can do things just like when we did with the track changes. I can go in and I can add comments. So I can add a comment here about what we're working with, about how we're working. And you're seeing that happen live, how we are working. The other thing working on this, as I hit comment, it'll show up on there. Also, right up here on the top right, next to all our individual icons that are showing up, there's a comment history that'll open up. And this here almost works like a chat in a way too, so that you can actually chat back and forth between different people as you're working with the document. So yeah, so this is, and so what happens is that in Google Docs you can easily import in. So if I come up here and do File, and actually you have to do it in Google Drive. You can actually upload if I go here to Docs, I can actually upload a new document. If I do, I'm trying to remember where this is actually. I know I can do it in Google Drive, but start a new document. Docs, Drive. If I go to Drive, I'm able to upload, so I can actually send a Word document up into the Google Docs. So you can work on it in Word, and then you can share it out with everybody as you when you want people to start working on it there. So that's Google Docs. It's something really fun to play with. It's a really great, easy way to get in and start working collaboratively with other people in a document so that they can go in, they can make changes or edits. You can change the sharing. So not only can people view it, but you can also set it so that people can view it and add comments, but not make changes. So you can do so you can have somebody say edit and not have full control over changing that there. So Google Docs, the easiest way to get there is if you go to google.com. And then you'll want to sign in. So you want to sign in with whatever your account is up here. I'm not going to show the signing in process because this is live streamed right now. And then you click this little, these little blocks, the triple blocks over here, and this will open up all the different Google products. And you just go to Google Drive. Google Drive is usually the best place. Google Drive allows you to store files and access files on and you're seeing actually, let me actually just change over to here, something more library related. So these are all my library related things in my Google Docs there, and I can easily come up here and add a new file, and I can either do a new Google Docs, new Google Sheets, slides. I can upload files, so I can upload something I've made in Microsoft Word, something I've made in Microsoft Excel. I can upload it onto there. I can organize things into folders. And so I go here and I'm able to just create a new document, and it's online. One of the nice things about working with Google Docs also is that it's accessible from any computer that you have access to the web and can sign into your Google Doc or into your Google account. So if I started working on this computer and then the library reopens and I'm able to go and sit down at my desk at the library, I can open up this document, will be there exactly as I left it off, and I'll be able to continue doing the work as if I hadn't left my computer. So I don't have to worry about things like saving it on a flash drive and transferring it over or whether it got saved or not. Working in Google Docs, everything gets saved as you're working on it as well too. So you don't have to worry about losing connection or losing access. So that has been Microsoft Word Advanced with a little bit of a dip into Google Docs there at the end. I hope everybody's kind of enjoyed this class. If you did, I do encourage you to go and fill out our survey. And so I have the address here on the screen now. If you go back to the YouTube screen, you'll see that there. It's projectoutcome.org/responses/50672. This is also available on the Online Tech Classes website. Down at the very bottom of the Advanced Word, there's a survey link that will also take you to this same survey. So that is Microsoft Word Advanced. I really appreciate everybody coming out and spending time with me today. Coming up for the rest of our schedule right now is next Tuesday from 2 to 4, same time as this. I will be doing Microsoft Office Integrated, which is looking at taking Microsoft Word, Excel, and PowerPoint and how to use them together. So we'll look at things like taking tables and graphs from Excel, putting them into Word and PowerPoint, and then we'll also look at the mail merge function. So how to take an organized set of data that you have in Excel and use it to create personalized letters and mail and personalized letters and mailing labels in Microsoft Word. And then next Thursday, April 23rd from 2 to 4, I will be doing an introduction to web building HTML and CSS class. So if you want to learn about kind of the building blocks of the World Wide Web and how the World Wide Web is kind of coded and made, these are the foundational technologies for the World Wide Web that even still today, even though they're 20 years old, about 20 years old, a little bit older than that, it's 25 years old, we're still using those same tools and that same kind of interface to kind of build the World Wide Web. So with all of that, thank you once again for attending. I hope to see you again Tuesday afternoon, and there will be a new schedule of classes. So if you've missed any of these here, I will probably be repeating them. I'm thinking about maybe trying them at a different time in the day to kind of hit a different crowd of people. These are all recorded and available on YouTube, so you can go back and watch all of the recordings. If you have any other questions or comments, please leave them in the chat. I'll hang out here for a couple more minutes, and that'll be it. Thank you again. Have a really great afternoon. Have a good weekend, and I hope everybody is staying safe. And thanks again, and goodbye, everybody.